Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
And as you can hear, we are home. Yes, the Bets are home. Finally. On our homes, in our home studio, on our home mics. So let's quickly get into it, and without much preamble, to talk about what's been going on. The last time you heard from us was just before Thanksgiving.
Right.
For those of you who are just joining us, go back and listen to a couple episodes ago, like episode, say, 120. That'll give you the lowdown on what's been going on for us for the past 2.5 to 3 months. So the last time you heard from us was just before Thanksgiving. We were moving from the house we'd been staying in, the rental house we've been staying in Plymouth, Massachusetts, for 2 months. No, for 1 month.
It was 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay, yes. And we were headed toward a place that was closer to home in the town next to us in Brockton. And so let's quickly talk about that Airbnb. What a difference from the one we were at previously.
Yes, what a difference.
It was hard to transition.
It was. I didn't really want to leave Plymouth. It was beautiful. It was a gorgeous house right by the ocean, and being by the ocean in the fall, as we've said, was awesome. Yeah. I was sad to leave, and the house in Brockton did not make it any easier.
No. So Brockton is a very urban city. It's a city, right. And it's a hard scrabble city. It's not a glamorous big city, metro cosmopolitan city. It is a hard scrabble working class city, and the neighborhood we were in was it was regular family homes, but there were some of them were kind of run down. It was
okay.
Yeah, it was all right. The house we were in was old. It was owned by, I'm guessing the Airbnb owner is a young guy with money who decided to get an investment in. And he clearly markets it, easy for me to say, as a place for guys to come and stay at while they're going to a Patriots game or going to a Red Sox game in Foxborough, the city.
Should have been our first clue.
That should have been our first clue. So it's like, whereas the place in Plymouth was comfortable and well decorated and
had a lot of feminine touches.
Yes. This was clearly a place by a young single guy. The walls were gray. Everything was like IKEA furniture, like IKEA counters.
Everything
kitchen.
Was shades of gray.
Shades of
white,
black, and gray. Yes.
There was no color in the whole place.
And no art except for some weird painting in the room the girls were sleeping in of like just sexy lady painting.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird. And there was like a 70-inch TV and 2 easy chairs in front of it. It's like a love seat sort of size chair, but they're both easy chairs that lean back with a beer holder in the middle.
Right. No sofa to speak of. So basically 2 people could sit down in the living room
and watch TV.
The
kitchen was equipped to make steaks and other meats. And then other things just very basic.
Very basic.
Like if you were to grill, if it were the summer, we would have been awesome. Just grill. There's a huge grill outside, all kinds of grilling tools, grilling spices.
Yep.
But little else.
And the kitchen towels were all like microfiber.
Microfiber, right.
They were like microfiber shop rags. There was nary a soft cottony towel to be found. I hate microfiber. I hate the way it makes my hands feel. I hated washing dishes. It was awful.
No drinking glasses, all like these it was either like old-fashioned glass or
wine glasses
or martini glasses.
There weren't even any like beer glasses.
No, that was kind of weird. Well, drink out of a bottle, I guess.
Or the can.
Anyway, it was perfectly serviceable, not comfortable. It was comfortable, I guess. It was serviceable.
It was serviceable, but my heart sank when we walked in, and I spent the entire time feeling like I was walking through the dark Shadowlands. And when we moved to our next place, the feeling of relief was palpable. Bella and I both agreed. We just felt like we'd been released from prison.
Right. So we stayed there for a week, and we only broke one window. The boys playing with the recliners.
They weren't even reclining. They weren't playing. The problem was the recliners were right in front of a big window with drapery between the recliner and the window, so you could not actually see how close the recliner was to the window.
Right.
And
well, they were leaning the recliner back and forth. They were kind of horsing around a little bit. But nevertheless, the recliner was too close to the window and it cracked. It's a multiply window and the inner part broke. So I contacted the owner, of course, and I apologized and I offered to pay for it, and he was very gracious and I told him to send me a bill, let me know how much it is. I haven't heard from him, so maybe he gave us a good review. So I gave him a good review, a better review than perhaps I might have, given that we broke the window. So that's how it works. It's a little transactional reviewing. So we were there for a week. And while we were there, that was Thanksgiving week. So we ended up going. We didn't we didn't plan to make Thanksgiving dinner for ourselves in a rental house. It just didn't seem like we could swing it. Then one of the Cub Scout leaders put our name in to a local charity thing I think it was the Rotary Club, to get a free Thanksgiving dinner. Right. All the turkey and all the fixins. And I was very grateful. They didn't need to do that. I mean, we could have bought the stuff if we'd had to, but we went and I picked it up, and we ended up making it anyway. Like the day of, I made the turkey, but we'd already made plans to go to my brother's house for Thanksgiving. So we ended up making the turkey for us for leftovers and that sort of thing. So we actually had our own Thanksgiving meal the next day.
In the past at home, we've made turkey to have leftovers when we've gone to other people's houses for Thanksgiving.
Right. It's a thing. People do that. It turned out well. I mean, cooking in this other kitchen, we managed. The turkey was really good. I think I did a pretty good job of that. You made
it was good.
Stuffing,
mashed potatoes.
I made gravy without having the usual things I would usually use for gravy. I used other stuff. I made a flour based instead of a cornstarch based gravy, and I think it was perfectly good. A little salty, but otherwise pretty good. And then but what we ended up doing was go to my brother's house and spending Thanksgiving with my brother and his kids and my mom, who lives with him, and my nephew, who's a lieutenant in the Army, came home for Thanksgiving, which was nice. As his first visit home in 9 months. Like it was like since last January even.
Right.
So like 11 months. He had just gotten engaged, and then my other nephew, his brother, who lives in the area, he had just gotten engaged, so we didn't get to see Katie, but we did see Beth. So so it was really nice.
It was very nice. It was very normal and
fun, homey. After dinner, my brother and his wife and their family went to the future in-laws' house for an after dinner thing, and we stayed with my mom. And then my sister showed up with her. How many does Evie have?
8.
Can never keep it straight. 8. And then my other sister is staying with her. She's had a knee surgery, so she's staying with her. And
shoulder surgery.
It was something surgery, some joint. Who knows? She's had everything done. She's the bionic woman now. And then my other brother, came over with my dad because my dad lives with him, and so we had this house full of family, and it was really awesome. It was a lot of fun, and I know it's usually overwhelming for you.
It was loud.
Introvert. It's loud. It's overwhelming, and after spending wonderful time with family, it's nice to go home. In which case, we didn't get to go home. We went back to this mediocre Airbnb.
Yeah.
So that was Thanksgiving. Then we moved to another Airbnb because our house was still not ready. So we at this point we were in 1 week increments.
Right.
Because the contractor, as the contractors do, just another week. I'll have it done in another week. So he said another week. So we found another place in this other town called Hull, which is another beach community.
Yeah. This was a nice house.
I tell you, I got pretty good at finding inexpensive Airbnbs that are nice for that fit our family.
You did.
Granted, it's the off season, so things are cheaper.
This would have been impossible during like the actual summer season.
So this was a really nice little Cape style house that kind of rambles. It's like it just keeps going on and on.
It was one of these houses that had clearly been like added to and then added to again and then added to again and then added to again.
Yeah, exactly.
It was super cute.
Yeah, and it had plenty of rooms upstairs. There's even a little room that I could work in with my computer. Although I was on this rickety bamboo rattan chair that I was afraid was going to collapse under me at any minute. I didn't want to move too quickly on it. There was even this huge playroom, but it was unheated because it's really intended for the summer. But the kids didn't deter them.
They wore jackets and they went out and played. They were so happy to have games and things.
Right. Well, because the place that we stayed at the week before didn't have any games or anything except what they brought with them, which was very little.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That was a really nice one.
And it was like literally 1 block from the beach. I mean, like 3 houses between us and the beach.
Yes. And
which was, I mean, Nantasket is a beautiful beach. It was cold.
Yeah.
Most of the time, although we had a couple of good days. There was amazing seashells though. The quahogs, like we picked up like 3 or 4 dozen quahog shells, like whole unbroken ones, which normally you don't find though. Like I think the entire time we were in Plymouth, we found 3.
Right. This is a beach that there must be a thriving quahog population right there that the seagulls are going after.
Right.
And you brought them all home because you're planning to do a Mary garden.
I want to do a Mary Star of the Sea garden.
You certainly brought enough quahogs for it.
we have our pick of quahogs. So that's one of my goals for the new year, to be creative and crafty and homemaking.
Yeah. Well, yes. Again, we'll get to the homemaking in a second. Just to kind of wrap up there. So we had one week there. Saturday came. We had to check out, and I can't emphasize enough how nice this place was. I mean,
super nice.
It wasn't quite as good. If I was to rank them, the Plymouth place was the best. This one was very close second, and then the other the man cave was third. But as we got closer to the weekend, the contractor kept, he was working nights, like all night. He'd be here from 5 o'clock in the afternoon till 5 o'clock in the morning. He was working way over time.
Our contractor is clearly a vampire because I don't know if I've ever seen him before sunset.
Well, he was here today.
Okay, this is true.
Yeah. So, but yeah, he apparently likes to work at night, and so he was putting in extra hours, clearly, but things just were not progressing as fast as they needed to, and he needed 2 more days. He kept first he said, "Give me 1 more day." So I said, "Okay, I'll give you 1 more day," but I booked a hotel for 2 nights. Now, all the other stays, all the Airbnbs were in the first hotel we stayed at, were paid for by insurance, but insurance had cut us off. They said, "This week is the last week. We're not paying for anything else," because they're, insurance company. So we had to pay for that out of our pocket. So we got 2 nights in another hotel, actually literally down the street from the first one we stayed at, but that one was booked. This one was an older hotel.
Yeah.
Wasn't as nice. Which is funny, but to say that a Holiday Inn Express was nice, but it was nice because it was brand new. It's a brand new hotel. And they had breakfast, hot breakfast every day and that sort of thing. This place didn't have anything like that. So we stayed there for 2 nights. And then finally we were able to come home. And
to a house that was mostly done.
Right. So there's still a lot of things There's some painting that needs to be done, some baseboards that he needs to put in.
Grouting in the tile in the bathroom.
Yes, the grouting in the tile in the bathroom. The spout for the bathtub.
The faucet, the actual faucet.
Not the faucet. The faucet is what you turn on or off.
No, that's the tap.
Okay, so the faucet on the tub. There's a little copper pipe sticking out. I have a punch list of a bunch of things he's got to do. Not to mention the soffits that he has to build to cover up all of the water pipes that are now at the tops of the walls in our house. Because, as I said before, the pipes used to run through the concrete slab, and that was the problem. And so they reroute it. The only thing they can do is to reroute it along the tops of the walls. Well, the other thing they could do was run it through the attic, but the plumber wouldn't do it. So we moved back into a house that was pretty empty, no beds. We had our bed. And we were given a barn-style bunk bed. If you've been to a college or a retreat house, and you see these bunk beds with these very thick wood posts, that's what someone gave us.
I swear the University of Dallas had these exact bunk beds. Super solid, will withstand college students. Yes. They will definitely withstand our boys. It's really lovely. I love it. It's gorgeous.
Yes. Fantastic. Getting in here was a bit of a trial because our car doesn't. We have a big van, but the seats don't come out, so you have to kind of fit things in. Well, then we had to go to IKEA because we had to buy mattresses to replace the ones that were all moldy, the kids' mattresses,
right? As
well as a new bed for Lucy because her bed was a toddler bed that she was still sleeping in that we had to get rid of because it was all broken up into pieces to begin with.
It was way past time for her to switch to a bigger bed. We just had not got around to it.
So we ended up getting a loft bed. Originally, Bella was going to sleep in it, but it's way too close to our ceiling because we have low ceilings. So Lucy will fit in there. And it's really crowded in their room.
Their room is like a Jenga jigsaw puzzle. It's crazy.
Yeah. First, putting it together was hard enough with the bunk bed that's already in there. And then just trying to figure out how to arrange it so it's not blocking windows or doors. And
there was one configuration that works. So sorry, kids, this is the way your room looks.
Yes, this is it. There's a desk that's supposed to go under the loft part, but I haven't put it in yet. And we'll see how things go. Maybe we will put it in, maybe we won't. But we'll see. Without it there, it gives them a little more room. So that's good. And then it's just like cleaning.
So much cleaning.
Everything was dirty.
Covered with thick layer of dust.
Now, to remember, our kitchen was still, we didn't unpack the kitchen. The kitchen we left the kitchen as is because there was no damage in there. But it turned out because they had to rerun the pipes, they had to run the pipes through the kitchen cabinets and under the kitchen inside the cabinets. And the plumbers left a giant mess, plus all of the sanding and cutting and wall making made all kinds of dust in the air. So everything was covered in thick layers of dust and sawdust, and every single thing in the kitchen had to be washed. And still a little bit that needs to be done.
Yeah, there's still some dishes that haven't been washed.
That shelf.
And some shelves that haven't been dusted, and walls that need to be painted. And my laundry room, I haven't even excavated the laundry room. I've been running loads of laundry nonstop and loads of dishes nonstop since we got back. But the laundry room itself is just a jumble of
it was already jumbled, and it's just it's more jumbled.
It's such a mess.
We excavated the office for the first time yesterday so that the kids could watch a movie. But the office had been filled with all of the things that were the most precious and fragile things that we didn't want to put in the pod because we rented a pod to store all of our stuff or leave out anywhere else. So that just got cleared out.
It's going to be weeks, if not months, before things are back to normal.
The pod's still not empty. That's got to be emptied this week so we can get rid of it. So we're not charged for another month of that. And then, but there's boxes everywhere. Boxes full of things. We've got to hang stuff on the walls. Oh, and by the way, we need to get ready for Christmas. We've got to put up a tree at some point. And the contractor's tools are still in the living room. He's supposed to finish tomorrow with that stuff. But
and our new couch, the couch that we have, we just left in the house. So it's because it was already it was gross.
Broken. It was broken into bits
and smelly.
We had a piece of plywood under it because it was sagged. It's a 13-year-old couch.
Yeah. So it was gross, and I didn't really feel like moving it into the pod. Like
it wouldn't fit in the pod.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even tried if it had fit, though. It was smelly. It was nasty. And so now it's still sitting in the living room. We've bought a new
the recliner that was the similar condition.
We've bought new ones, but they will arrive.
They're back ordered.
They're back ordered.
Like everything else in the United States is back ordered.
So sometime, hopefully before the new year, maybe even before Christmas, though I'm not holding my breath.
The sales lady did say that the expected date was December 19th.
Yes.
So she said to call December 19th, and so that's what I'm
really hoping, pray for a Christmas miracle that we have a couch to sit on Christmas morning.
Otherwise, we're sitting on the floor in the living room around the tree.
Or sitting in the dining room chairs.
Yeah.
Which is what we've been doing for like family prayers.
I can get the camp chairs out of the shed.
I'm not sure if that's better or worse.
I know. Let's scrape up our brand new floors. So that's where we stand. You know, we're happy. We're happy to be home, and everything looks lovely. The paint, new floors.
The floors are gorgeous.
It's like staying in a new place.
The paint is lovely. It's all wonderful. It's just it's not really home yet because everything still needs work.
There's none of our artwork is hanging. You know, very little of the artwork is hanging.
We don't even have curtains in our bedroom right now.
We got to hang curtains. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle all needs to be done. So it's going to be time. It's going to take time for it to be fully like, it's like moving in. It's like when we moved in here the first time, it took months to finally get rid of the last boxes. In fact, there's a couple of boxes under this desk that have been there for 13 years. Yeah.
Of course, I also got pregnant within the first few days of moving in.
Yeah.
So we don't even want to think about that.
Well, no worries about that. Oh man, 53 years old. I have high school classmates who are grandfathers now. So, I mean, whatever God wills. But anyway, where was I? You just threw me off there. So anyway, the great cleanup continues. The great settling in continues. We really do. I want to take a moment to really thank everyone who supported us with your prayers. Financially, I mean, the total cost of the whole shebang, the whole shooting match, is like a ballpark is around $75,000, like everything, and the insurance has so far only paid about 50 of that. So, you know, we raised just over 25,000, and then GoFundMe takes its cut off the top. So it's actually pretty close to exactly what we raised, you know, what people gave to help us. Maybe even not, you know, once we figure in Christmas and stuff. I mean, because there's so many expenses. It's like staying 2 days at a hotel. It's not just the $500 for 2 rooms for 2 nights. It's also
eating out.
Another $500 in eating out. Like every time we go out to dinner somewhere, it's $140, $130. It's you know, and lunch at a fast food place is another $80, $70. So that was like 2 nights, $1,000 right there. So, we couldn't have survived like this without people's support. It was such a blessing. God looked out for us. This could have been so much worse. And that's what I think about is, you know, as horrific as this last quarter of the year has been for us, so many people have it so much worse. And I think of the people who've been suffering under the tornadoes in Kentucky and in that area. It was just
one of the professors from UD, former professor, lost everything. She and her husband survived, but only with the clothes on their back.
I can't imagine. Like people have, you know, their house burns down. They get out and they're standing in the street in their pajamas, you know, and that's all they have. I mean, we are blessed that things worked out as well as they did. We had beautiful places to stay. Our house was redone. We were able to have a contractor who worked hard. I mean, Joe worked really hard
and well. Like, the work that he did is really nice.
He wouldn't cut corners. He did things, the right way, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can work with the insurance and cover those last few bits and bobs of that stuff and close the door on this and move on to the next the next chapter of life. No more 2021s anymore. So let's talk about food, because I know that our listeners love when we talk about the things we've been cooking and eating, and we've talked before in the most recent podcast that cooking in other people's kitchens made it really hard to be creative and do interesting things.
Oh my goodness. I've spent time I probably should have spent unpacking and cleaning, cooking, just because I'm so happy to be in my own kitchen again and like to be able to cook real food.
Right. So what have we made since we've been home? So you made pulled pork.
I made pulled pork in my Instant Pot. I missed my Instant Pot so much.
See.
Okay.
I had to convince you to get it,
but seriously, at like 2 p.m., I had a chunk of frozen solid pork, and I defrosted it in the microwave a little bit, enough to cut it into some chunks that were still pretty frozen, and threw it in the Instant Pot with some cola syrup and some vinegar and spices, and
then how long did it take? An hour.
I did a little bit longer in the Instant Pot because I just wanted to make sure it was shreddable. So it was like an hour and a half in the Instant Pot and then another 15 minutes or so under the broiler.
And that's it. Boom. And hands off.
Oh, and it's so good.
Yeah. And then after we had pulled pork sandwiches, then the next day
I made Jamaican patties.
Which Jamaican patties are in the long tradition of, in so many cultures, have stuffed pastry sandwich things, Cornish pasties, various dumplings, calzone, all those different kinds of things. And so you made Jamaican style, because it's funny, both Anthony and Lucy and Sophie, so all three of them, have really gotten into. We found frozen ones at the supermarket, in one of the supermarkets in the places we were staying, and they all got into it so much for lunches. And so
good.
You said, well, you like that? I'll make you some from scratch.
These were not, however, spicy. Like, they were mild because I wanted everyone to eat them.
Hot spicy, flavorful spicy.
They were not.
Yeah, you didn't put hot peppers.
No. So those came out really well. I used 8 cups of flour and 5 sticks of butter to make the pastry. And
how many did that make?
It made 25 smallish, medium size, small to medium.
So a couple dozen. Yeah.
Yeah. And they tasted even better the second day. So good.
Yeah, just throw them in the toaster oven and warm them up there. Oh, I'm so glad to have our toaster oven again.
Yeah.
Compared to all those terrible cheap toaster ovens. I bought the Cadillac of toaster ovens.
You did.
So yeah. So you made the Jamaican patties, and then today is the feast, as we record, the Feast of Saint Lucia, Santa Lucia.
And Lucy and I made saffron buns.
Lucia buns. And
we had so much fun making them. She loves to help roll them out and little snakes, and
and she can eat the regular.
Yeah, I made them with regular flour as opposed to gluten-free make do.
Right.
So much better.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was nice. I want to get started on my Christmas baking. I have so many things I want to cook. I want to make fruitcake and I want to fudge
eat all of them. We have to make eggnog.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's. What was there anything else we made the last week? I made the soup, the turkey soup. We saved the bones from our turkey. We froze them, brought them home, made turkey soup. Lots of it.
Beef stroganoff at Ben's request.
Yep. That was the other thing, is we're now making a lot of dishes that the kids missed. So, yeah. Yeah, and I want to get back to looking at new recipes, making some new things, being creative. I'm happy to be back. Although one thing I want to make that haven't made in a while is Sunday gravy, the Italian sauce with the meat. That's such a great meal to have in the winter, like on a cold winter day. All right, so that's what we've been eating. So let's talk about what we've been watching and reading. So we have decided we've pretty much watched all of the Star Wars stuff with the kids. They're still watching Star Wars Resistance, although it's not as good. I think they even are not as excited by it. It's okay. It actually gets better as it goes on, but nevertheless, we'd finished watching Star Wars Visions and all that stuff like that. So what are we going to watch next? And you and I decided it was time for Marvel.
It was time for Marvel.
So, because Bella is 15 and she's involved in this homeschool online community, and a lot of the kids there have seen, most kids have seen the Marvel movies. And it's not like we've been holding them back for any particular reason, right?
I thought that they might be a little too intense especially
the little ones.
Especially for Bella, actually.
Well, actually, Bella.
She tends to not do terribly well with dramatic tension when she was younger. But I think that she's gotten much better in the last few years, and she's much more excited about this sort of movie.
In fact, she's done really well with this. Yeah.
It just seemed like they were getting more interested and more curious, and it felt like it was time.
And now we can buy Marvel Legos, now that all the inexpensive or less expensive Star Wars Legos have been purchased.
I hadn't thought about Marvel Legos.
Yes, that just literally just occurred to me right now. Because Bella's and Sophie are now doing, in addition to their Star Wars drawings, now they're starting to do Marvel drawings.
I'm not sure if Sophie is, but Bella is.
But Bella certainly has.
Bella has now drawn Loki and Black Widow.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're watching them in order, the correct order, which is the order in which they were produced, not the weird, like, magician's nephew order. So we watched Iron Man 2, and Thor so far.
It's I have to say, having just watched them all for the first time myself this past year, it's been so much fun to watch them with the kids. Mm-hmm. Like, watching them by myself, it was, good. It was amusing. Yeah. I enjoyed them. Watching them with the kids is like a hoot,
especially when they get the jokes and the comedic moments and that stuff, and they crack up. They appreciate them, yeah. Or they get excited. Oh, that's so and so. They know they've read the layers, so they know all the Norse mythology. So that was fun. There.
Thor was especially fun with them because they definitely know their mythology.
I was a little uncomfortable in Iron Man, because there was that one scene where he goes to bed with the reporter.
Yes, I was dreading that one, but
I had forgotten about it until just before, and I'm like, what do we do? Do we fast forward? Or we just go with it and just hope that it goes over their heads? Which is what we did.
Right. We had talked ahead of time before we watched it.
We had.
That Tony Stark at the beginning is not a very nice guy.
Right.
He is not pleasant. He is rude. He's self-centered. And I think that framing it that way, like, this is not the act of a nice person. I mean, the way he's acting throughout most of that movie is not nice.
Right. It's actually interesting for me to go back and watch it, because you see the journey he's headed down until Endgame.
Right.
That is an interest. He is a very different person in Endgame than he is in Iron Man. That's for certain. Although I think it's Iron Man 3 where he has the major turning point.
Right. The first two movies. Right. The first two movies, you see growth. Definitely, he's moving in the right direction. When he decides that Stark Industries is no longer going to focus on weapons, there's that moment. But he doesn't completely repudiate fighting or
just being a cad,
being a jerk, or
being a pompous, rich guy. He's still a pompous rich guy, but he's better.
Right. And I love, that's one thing I actually really love about Tony Stark, is that he he goes on a journey. It's not like he had this experience and it changed his life, and then he's suddenly a really good guy.
Yes.
He's a better guy.
Right.
But he's still flawed.
Yes. And in Civil War, even, you know, his time with Steve Rogers changes him more. But even in Civil War, where they're at war, he kind of regresses a bit, you know, but yet there's still something about him that he's fighting for some good beyond himself. So yeah, it's I'm really looking forward to seeing them get there to the Avengers movies, because that's going to be really good. They're gonna see Red Skull in the next one. He's kind of intense, Red Skull, in Captain America.
I don't really. I kind of was not terribly awake when I watched Captain America.
It's a skull who's red. He's kind of scary looking.
Yeah, Captain America was the one where I was watching it at night, and I mostly remember it.
I love Captain America. That's one of my that's right up there with my favorites. So anyway, so we're watching those, so we'll let you know how it goes. But so far, so good. I mean, I feel like we're kind of behind on the pop culture. We also watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think we talked about
only
that.
A couple of the kids watched,
but only Anthony and Lucy saw that, because the others were camping. The older ones were camping,
right.
So, and they saw that, and they were fine with that. Although I did cover their eyes for the scary melty candle part.
Melty candle.
What a world! What a world! Melt your Nazis. Anyway, let's talk about some other stuff I've been watching. So on Apple TV Plus, there's been this series, I think I mentioned it before, called Invasion, and it's kind of an interesting take on an alien invasion story. It follows a bunch of different people. This woman who is, I think she's Middle Eastern. They might be Indian. Actually, I think they're like Indian subcontinent. And her husband, at least ethnically, but they don't. It's not like they're immigrants, because they don't have accents. And he's a doctor. She was a doctor, or she was a med student who gave up her career when she got married and started having kids. And he's a successful businessman of some sort, I guess. I forget what he does. But he was, no spoilers. Early on, you learn that the marriage is unhappy. But yet, because of this alien invasion and with their two kids, they're kind of forced on the run from the aliens together, even as she resents him. You know, so you get him, you get this Navy SEAL in Afghanistan. You have this British kid who has epilepsy, which somehow gives him some sort of connection to the aliens, which doesn't really come out till later. And then you have this Japanese woman who works for the Japanese Space Agency and who has a relationship with one of the astronauts who are in space at the time of the invasion, and all kinds of stuff happen with that. All right, so it's an interesting story. The interesting aliens, they don't fit the usual parameters of, you know, guys in plastic. They look really alien and they act really alien. The downside is, like, it's a slow series. I feel like they were trying to do Arrival. Remember Arrival?
I loved Arrival.
Arrival was awesome. One of the best sci-fi movies. It was, but everything was so slow, and like there were moments of high action and thrill, like lots going on. There was one episode where it was like they were in a house at night, this family, and being chased around the house by the alien, and it's like it was so dark I couldn't see what was going on half the time, and I'm like, is this a conscious decision on the part of the filmmaker because it makes it scarier because you can't see it like they can, or is it just we're filming it dark, and, you know, if you don't have the right things to see this well, you don't have a good enough home theater, well, that's your fault. I don't know, but it was like frustrating. And then the last episode, literally almost nothing happens. Like there's long scenes of people staring into space, like staring there. Like why are we looking at this person just staring? Like, you know, he's on a street corner staring off. Like, okay. So it was okay. There is a second season coming. It ends with a clear cliffhanger of something to come. But that's Invasion on Apple TV Plus. I've also been watching the Wheel of Time series, which is interesting. I didn't read the books, but I gather from people who've read the books that they've introduced some woke-ish elements to it, some politically correct stuff. So that's too bad. It's interesting. It's kind of an interesting world. I feel like the series is presenting a very small slice of a very big book series. I guess that's another thing I've heard from people. So, but it makes me kind of interested in reading the books, which is, I'm sure, Amazon's idea.
Right.
And then, as far as speaking of reading, I finished a book called Forgotten Ruin. This was a recommendation from a friend on Twitter. And the premise is you have a ranger company, U.S. Army Rangers, so an elite fighting force. There's something going wrong with the world. And meanwhile, they've developed technology of time travel, and everything is falling apart. Like technology, people are getting sick, all from this nanovirus of some kind. And they're sending groups of soldiers, scientists, politicians, etc., in planes through this time machine thing a few years into the future, after everything has gone to hell, to rebuild. And something goes wrong, and they end up 10,000 years in the future. And the world has changed to become basically Middle Earth, D&D. Orcs, magicians, there's magic, there's, wizards, elves, like you name it, giants, evil, Sauron type lords, dark lords, vampires, werewolves, all kinds of stuff. And so the premise is, what would happen if a U.S. Army Army Ranger company ended up in Middle Earth? That's kind of where they're going with it. Oh, also, they conveniently have this technology called the Forge, which can make anything they need, like unlimited ammunition and supplies.
That's a nice, handy little plot device.
Right. Otherwise, they would quickly end up, with swords, and then it would just be a standard, a bunch of soldiers with edged weapons. So this is a way of them being U.S. Army Ranger Company in Middle Earth as a Ranger Company with all their stuff, their capability.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. It was a very slow first half. There was literally no movement in the first half. They were under siege for the first half of the book on this island where successive waves of bad guys like orcs and goblins and trolls and stuff were attacking them.
That sounds really boring.
It was kind of boring, and I was kind of very close to giving up until finally a major character got introduced, and they got off the island and started a trek moving to a place that they needed to go. And then it got really interesting, and it's the first book in a series, of course.
Of course.
So I may read the next book. It kind of leaves in an interesting place. I'm kind of interested in what happens to these characters. So I may eventually come back to this, but it's kind of interesting. You've read a book.
I started a couple books, and one of them I might go back to. It was kind of slow moving. It was called Arundel. And it's a historical novel set at about the time of the Revolutionary War. I think that eventually the main character ends up hooking up with Benedict Arnold and
for the Battle of Montreal.
For the Battle of Montreal. He's got personal reasons for wanting to go to Montreal and kick some French butt.
Don't we all?
But it starts earlier when he's a young man living in Maine, in the town of Arundel, Maine. And it's interesting. His father is very friendly with Native Americans, and in fact has a sort of second family with a Native American woman.
As you do, apparently.
As people do. And he's an innkeeper, and is involved in like trading, and as I got as far as ramping up towards the Revolutionary War, which he's kind of not really sure about, but his end's been taken over by the Sons of Liberty, and basically it's either give us lots of free beer and let us have our meetings in your inn, or you will regret it. The Sons of Liberty were kind of thugs, honestly.
They kind of were. That's not made up. Right.
And it's not made up. They were thugs. And the book showed them really honestly. I mean, there was a lot of really good writing. It was slow, and I really kind of needed something that was a bit faster with all of the drama that we were undergoing in living in temporary housing. I kind of needed something that was a bit faster paced. So I let it slide. And then I totally gave up on the City of Brass series, which was fantasy novel set in a fictional Islamic world, medieval Islamic world with genies. I really got the feeling that none of the protagonists were people I really cared that much about. I was halfway through the second book in the trilogy, and I kind of didn't feel like the story was going where I cared to follow.
Was this the follow-on to the book, The Jinn and the Golem?
No.
Oh, okay.
This was a totally different series. The first book was City of Brass, and then something Kingdom of Copper, and then, I don't know, some other metal. They're like, it's intriguing world.
Nation of Aluminum.
Right. It's intriguing world building. I just felt like there were two different sides, and neither one of them had the moral high ground. They were both kind of committed to winning at all costs, with nobody holding a moral stance. Mm-hmm. Like the one guy who was sort of protesting against protesting for the rights of the half-breed genie human persons, he totally sells out for political expediency. And even if he decides to flip-flop and change his mind and go back to being like on the right side of good, I just don't really care. I stopped caring about like the stakes.
Yeah.
So I gave up on that.
That's a bad sign.
Right. There haven't been that many books that I've just totally given up on, especially like after finishing the first book in the series, but I was done.
Oh, there have been plenty of times I've given up on a series after reading a few books in.
Yeah.
Dune being one of them, sadly.
Well, okay, yeah, Dune was...
Everybody gives up on Dune after a few books.
Right. It just got progressively worse and worse and worse as it went on. Okay, but I did finish one novel, which was really good, which was the third book of the Thrawn Ascendancy series.
This is a Star Wars novel series.
And so the third book is Lesser Evil. And it basically ends where the first Thrawn book begins.
The first trilogy.
The first trilogy begins. So basically you have a trilogy, and then you go back and you have the prequels. So this was the third of the prequels.
It's a fascinating way of doing things that they wrote this one, the first trilogy, and then went back and wrote this trilogy.
Right. Well, because the first trilogy is really about Thrawn in
the Star Wars
Empire galaxy
that we know.
Right. The empire that we know.
Yeah.
But the fact is that Thrawn is an alien from outside the galaxy.
Well, outside in the unknown regions, or the wild regions of their galaxy.
Of their galaxy.
Not our galaxy.
And so the prequels really take you back to the Chiss Ascendancy, where Thrawn comes from, and why is he exiled? Why is he making deals with the Emperor? What is his agenda? And I really loved it. Thrawn as a hero is great, and his backstory was really good. The second two books in the Ascendancy trilogy were a little slow at times, but I think that partly that was also because I was reading them as they were published, and so I think that I want to go back and reread them all in one go. Because I started to get confused about like the various alien races and what was going on and which battle was which. And they all do a little bit of a going back and forth in time. So you have one part of the novel, which is sort of pushing the story forward. And then another part of the novel, like intercut, which is going back and filling in some of the backstory.
Right.
Which in a series, which is itself the backstory, was like there were too many timelines going on, and I was having a little bit of trouble keeping it all straight in my head, especially with gaps between reading them. But I love the series. I love the character, and it was good. It ended in a very satisfactory way.
And so Thrawn shows up in stuff that you might see, Star Wars stuff, even if you don't read the books, because he was in Star Wars Rebels. He was Grand Admiral Thrawn for the Empire, and it's very interesting. He's kind of a hero character in these books, but he works for the Empire, and that's an interesting place for him to be. And in fact, in the Star Wars Rebels, he's not really a good guy.
No, in Rebels, he is the big bad antagonist, and he does not come across as somebody you want to empathize with at all. He's cold, he's calculating, he's kind of cruel, and the way Timothy Zahn takes the character and makes him true to the TV series, the Rebels series, and yet makes him into a sympathetic character who you are rooting for. And at times in the first Thrawn trilogy that takes place in the Empire, you're following Thrawn as he's fighting against rebels for the Emperor, and you find yourself
rooting for him, like going, no, he's the bad guy.
Right,
I root for rebels.
Right, you find yourself on the side of the Empire versus the rebels, which is a really weird.
Well, it explains a lot about how people end up in those places in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you kind of understand where he's coming from.
And Thrawn's important because he's also going to show up, we suspect, in the Ahsoka series that's coming up in the next couple of years.
He'd better show up in the Ahsoka series.
Yeah. And what's interesting is even though he was previously in Rebels, Thrawn is an invention of Timothy Zahn, who wrote him for a series of books, Star Wars books in the 90s that are now legends as opposed to the current canon.
Well, it's kind of interesting because he wrote them as legends.
Well, he wrote them.
I mean, he wrote them. They became legends. So then he rewrote the character back into the canon.
He didn't. Dave Filoni brought him into Rebels.
Right, that's true.
They've been plucking the best bits from stuff that was made after Return of the Jedi and before the Disney bought Star Wars, plucking stuff from that era, the best bits. And Thrawn was clearly the best bit of that era, the best overall. People loved those books.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to read them because I first encountered Thrawn in Rebels, and
it would have been confusing to read those in the midst of reading these.
Yeah. At some point, maybe I'll go back and read them, but I really like the Thrawn that is now current canon is the one I'm most interested in because
they've certainly filled his character out much more than he ever was in the original trilogy. I mean, he's still very much this similar character. Like all his major characteristics are the same, but there's so much more about him now that it's just way, way more. So he's a better character now.
Right. So then
you finish that book, and the kids have been reading those books. In fact, I'm the last one to read this book, apart from Lucy.
Right. I finished reading it, and then I went back and actually started rereading the original Thrawn trilogy again. I'm probably going to read the whole thing all the way through, just to get it in my head.
Yes, this is where the kids get that, because they do the same thing. They reread and reread their favorite books.
I'm not usually
used to do that when I was a kid.
I'm not usually a huge rereader. I mean, I'm certainly nowhere near what the kids are, but occasionally, especially with complicated series with lots of stuff going on that come out over a period of time, I sometimes do want to go back and sort of fill myself in on, like, I keep getting it all straight in my head.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I had much more that I read. I feel like there's another book or two that I must have read because that can't have been all of November. But for the life of me, I can't remember. I don't know. Watching? Have I watched anything?
Like I've found you watching stuff.
Oh, I've been watching Hawkeye.
Oh, we haven't talked about Hawkeye.
Oh my gosh, I love Hawkeye. That is a brilliant series.
Yes.
A brilliant Christmas theme series.
Right. There's so much going on there for the Marvel universe. There's And I'm convinced Kingpin is going to show up. He's the big baddie played by Vincent D'Onofrio in the Daredevil series, the Netflix Marvel series. He's the big baddie behind the scenes there. I'm convinced of it. And it's so good. I mean, Hawkeye as the kind of broken down superhero. You have what else? You've got the sidekick, the earnest young sidekick who he's reluctantly taken on. You have the all the back characters like the LARPers.
Oh my gosh, I love the LARPers.
The live action role players that he gets involved with. I mean, just so good. It's just so good. And then the action sequences are really great, and the filming of it.
The action sequences are great. And Hawkeye as a dad, I just love his character.
Yes.
And it's the classic dad trying to get home for Christmas, not wanting to disappoint the kids. It also had a brilliant moment where he's in New York with the kids. This is in the very first episode, and it's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
They go and see a play. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, Rogers the musical. Broadway made a musical about
the Avengers.
About the Avengers in the Battle of New York. And it's as cringy as you could imagine it would be.
Oh, it was so good. And watching Hawkeye watch it, it was just, oh my gosh, that was one of the best moments.
That was really fantastic. That was fun. I would watch Rogers the musical. The whole thing.
So bad.
Yeah. But yeah, Hawkeye is excellent. All of the Marvel streaming series this year, for all four of them, have been fantastic. WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, and now Hawkeye.
I wasn't as fond of Loki as the others. I mean, I love Loki, the character. I just didn't think the story held together as well.
The ending of it was a little floofy. It was a little hard to get.
I'm just really not a big multiverse fan.
Yeah, you're not going to like the next phase of Marvel.
I want to, but I'm afraid.
There might be stuff that you'll enjoy of it, but yeah. The Loki series was the one that had the most fan service for fans of the comic books. Like if you knew the comic book stuff, it had all kinds of stuff in there for you, especially the end of it. But if you weren't someone like that, that was kind of confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we need to move on because we're hitting an hour here, and we still got to talk about our homecoming at our parish, which was really nice. So we finally got to go. We had been away from Mass at our parish for 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And which is kind of funny because we had just got a new pastor who is a friend of mine, and you had been able to go to Mass with him. But we had something happen where I think one of the kids, we had to split masses. And so I had to go to a different Mass or watch to do the streaming Mass or something like that at the Mass that he was at, because he's a pastor of 3 parishes. And so he has to split his time among them. And so I missed seeing him. And so I got to see him for the first time at that first Mass.
Oh, I thought you had seen him.
No. So that was like 2 weeks ago was the first time that I'd been able to go to Mass and see Father Matt. So our new pastor is Father Matt Westcott, who is a pastor in the Archdiocese of Boston, but he's also a reserve U.S. Navy chaplain with the U.S. Marines. I think I've talked about him before. And really great.
Yeah. Oh, his homily yesterday was like, it hit so hard. It's so perfectly.
Gaudete Sunday.
So he talked about like how, first of all, how rejoice is an imperative verb in St. Paul.
It's a command.
And, but then like that, how that poses a problem for us when we are in difficult life situations. Like, how am I supposed to rejoice when my mom just died, when I lost my job, when, your house floods,
when the water dragons attack?
Right. How do you rejoice in those situations? And Father Matt illustrated it really beautifully with an image from medieval art, the Wheel of Time.
Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune. Sorry.
Wheel of Time is this series.
Confuse me.
Wheel of Fortune is the game show.
Not the game show. But in medieval art, the Wheel of Fortune portrayed how
life has its ups and downs.
Life has its ups and downs. Sometimes you're on the top. Sometimes then the wheel turns and then you're crushed.
It's like the Sinatra song, which he actually quoted in the homily.
Yeah. But then he talked about like how at the center of the image of the Wheel of Fortune is Christ. And that no matter whether we're going up or coming down, whatever fortune has for us, the real center of our life, the real center of our rejoicing is not the circumstances that we're in, because the circumstances might not be things that we make us feel like rejoicing, but that Jesus is the center of our life, that he has us in his care, and that he has won the ultimate victory, regardless of what temporary setbacks we have. It was so heartening. It was just exactly what I needed to hear, because we have been being crushed under fortune's wheel for a while.
Right.
And that was really it was heartening.
Yes. And the other nice thing has been the welcome we've gotten from our fellow parishioners.
It's been so nice to see, familiar faces and friends. We've been at this parish for 5 years now, maybe 4 or 5. 4 or 5 years. It hasn't been that long, and we're just getting to the point of kind of feeling settled in and knowing people. And it's been really nice to have people excited to see us. I told one woman who I have talked to in the past many times, and I told her briefly what was going on with us. And the next Sunday, she handed me a card with some money in it and a St. Anthony novena, and said that she'd been praying for us and she wanted to adopt us for her
Christmas giving.
Her Christmas giving this year. And it was so nice to just feel recognized and loved and missed and
I've
wanted.
Had several men at the parish come up to me, and just kind of hand me an envelope in my hand. Hey, this is for you. Just it's not much, but I just want to, I've heard what you've been going through. And this is not a wealthy parish. I mean, people, people have all kinds of economic levels there. You have poor people, you have middle class people, that sort of thing. So I don't know the circumstances of the individual people who've been helping us, but it's humbling, and it's hard to sometimes to accept that charity like that, but you do, because it's charitable to let them be charitable, to let them do something loving, an act of love on their own. And so, but it's been so amazingly humbling to be, I mean, frankly, we kind of stand out, because not only we are a family of 7, which is unusual pretty much anywhere these days, but we're one of the very few white families in the parish. Most people are like either Haitian or Cape Verdean
or African.
So it's nice to be noticed and welcomed and accepted and part of the community. And I mean, we've been to, when we had the parish picnic this past summer, we talked about before, and we just kind of there and like part of the crowd, part of the community, part of the family. And it's really nice to be like that. And Father Matt was like, hey, I heard your house is practically brand new. Let me know when I can come over and give it a blessing. And so I'm like,
new house, new blessing.
Yeah, we'll have him over for dinner along with Father Chip, because Father Chip is a mutual friend. And so that would be a lot of fun. We just gotta get the house back in one piece, and then we can invite people over for dinner. Yeah,
it's not quite in a state where I would feel comfortable having anyone visit.
Yeah, still boxes everywhere, like I said. But so it is nice to come home. We visited a number of parishes while we were gone. St. Bonaventure in Plymouth was nice. It was very full parish, very active, lots of families. We got to go to St. Kateri Parish, Cattery, depends on how you pronounce it, I guess, where our former pastor, one of our former pastors from our parish, is now.
We talked about that.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun seeing him. And then, did we go any place else other than Bonaventure and Kateri?
We went to Holy Trinity in Harwich.
Oh, right. The one on the Cape. Yes. So,
and
I think that was it. Because then when we were at the Airbnb in Brockton, we went to our home parish, St. Nita Stein.
Right.
So, it's nice to be home. Let's say about that in many ways. Parish home, our home. All right, let's wrap it up. We do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Josh H., Catherine B., Dave T., Victor C., and Jeffrey J. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear your feedback, any comments, any suggestions, any ideas you have for us as we move back into our home. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. Or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to bets@sqpn.com. You can find relevant links from our discussion in our show notes, including links to all those books that we talked about. Our show notes are at sqpn.com. If you haven't yet done so, follow Raising the Bets in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the StarQuest YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And make sure to hit the bell to get notifications. Until next time, I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest. Hi, everyone. This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of StarQuest, with a special message as we approach the Christmas season. This past year, the StarQuest Network has continued to expand our mission of exploring the intersection of faith and pop culture through our many entertaining and informative programs. Now we need your generous financial support to reach new audiences with more of the life-changing and uplifting programming we've been creating for more than a decade. That's why it's very important that we hear from you this Advent and Christmas, the time when nonprofits receive most of their support for the year. If you are already a supporter of StarQuest, we thank you and ask you to prayerfully consider increasing your support at this time. If you're not yet a supporter, please become one now. Every gift counts. Could you give $15 or even just $10 per month? Whatever level of support you can offer, please show your support for SQPN this Christmas. And remember that your gifts may be tax deductible. Just go to sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. May God bless you this Advent, and may you have a blessed Christmas season.